My son died 5 years ago. Or that's what they told me. Every year since, I sent his widow $50,000 to help raise my grandson. That's $250,000 total. Money I earned from 40 years of running a hardware store in this small Ohio town, working 12-hour days even after my knees started giving out. I did it because that's what fathers do. You take care of your family, even after they're gone. Then one Sunday afternoon, my 8-year-old grandson looked up from his ice cream and said something that changed everything. "Grandpa, why do we keep sending money to Mom when Dad doesn't need it anymore?" I'm Robert Mitchell, 63 years old, and until that moment at Riverside Dairy, I thought I understood my life. My son David died in Guatemala 5 years ago during a church mission trip, building homes for families who had nothing, just like he always wanted to do. They said there was a construction accident, a scaffold collapse. His body was buried there according to local customs, before I could even get on a plane. His widow, Jennifer, brought home his personal effects in a small box. His wedding ring, his Bible, his watch. No body, no funeral, just a memorial service where Pastor Marcus from Crossroad Community Church stood at the pulpit and told us David was building homes in heaven now. My wife Ellen couldn't take it. The grief consumed her. She lasted 9 months before her heart just stopped one morning while making coffee. The doctors called it a cardiac event, but I knew better. She died of a broken heart, lost our only son, then lost the will to keep going. That left me, Jennifer, and 8-year-old Tyler, my grandson, the only piece of David I had left. Jennifer said she needed help. Said Tyler needed stability, that raising a boy alone was hard, that David would have wanted me to step up. So I did. $50,000 every January. Like clockwork. For Tyler's education, his future, his needs. I never questioned it. Why would I? Jennifer was family. David had loved her. And I'd promised Ellen before she died that I'd take care of them both. Now Tyler sat across from me at our usual corner booth, chocolate sauce on his chin, asking questions that made my coffee taste like ash. "What do you mean, buddy?" I asked carefully. He shrugged, focusing very hard on his sundae. "Nothing. Forget it, Tyler." I reached across and tilted his chin up gently. "What did you mean about your dad not needing the money?" His eyes got wide and scared. The same look kids get when they've said something they weren't supposed to. My chest tightened. "Talk about what?" "The phone calls. The trips. What trips, Tyler?" "I can't tell you. Mom said, if I told anyone, especially you, something bad would happen." The words hit me like a physical blow. I kept my voice calm, even though my hands were shaking. "Tyler, you can tell me anything. I promise nothing bad will happen. I'm your grandpa. I'm here to keep you safe." He looked around the dairy shop like someone might be listening. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "Mom goes away sometimes. She says it's for work, but I heard her on the phone talking to Pastor Marcus about seeing Dad, about how he's getting better." The world tilted sideways. Better from what? I don't know. "But Grandpa, if Dad's getting better, that means he's not in heaven, right? That means he's somewhere else?" I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My son was dead. I'd mourned him for 5 years. Ellen had died believing he was gone. We'd stood in that church and cried through that memorial service. But Tyler was 8 years old. 8-year-olds didn't make up elaborate stories. They didn't understand nuance or manipulation. If Tyler said he heard his mother talking about seeing David, about David getting better, "When did you hear this, buddy?" "Last week." Mom was in her room on the phone. I was supposed to be asleep, but I needed water. And I heard her say, "I'll be there Saturday. Tell David I'm bringing the money." And then she laughed and said something about you being, a word I'm not supposed to say. "What word?" Tyler's face went red. "A sucker." The dairy shop felt too small suddenly, too loud, too bright. I pulled out my wallet and left cash on the table. "Come on, buddy. Let's get you home." During the drive to Jennifer's house, the house I'd helped with the down payment, using money from my retirement savings, Tyler was silent. When we pulled up to the curb, he turned to me. "Grandpa, are you mad at me?" "Nobody, never." I hugged him tight. He nodded solemnly. "Good boy. I'll see you next Sunday. Same time." Jennifer was waiting on the porch when Tyler ran up. She waved at me, all smiles, pretty. 32 years old, wearing expensive yoga pants and a designer jacket I'd probably paid for with last year's check. I waved back, smiled, kept everything normal. Then I drove home to my empty house and sat in the dark, trying to make sense of what my grandson had just told me. "David's getting better. I'll be there Saturday. Tell David I'm bringing the money." My son was dead. He had to be dead. Pastor Marcus himself had called me from Guatemala, voice breaking, to tell me about the accident, had described the local burial, the impossibility of bringing the body home due to local regulations and the condition of the remains. But Tyler wasn't lying. Kids that age didn't have the capacity for this kind of deception. I went to my office and pulled out the file I'd kept from David's death. Everything was there. The death certificate from Guatemala, stamped and official. The letter from the mission organization explaining the circumstances. The photos Pastor Marcus had brought back, not of David, but of the construction site, the memorial marker the local church had placed. I'd accepted all of it. Been too broken by grief to question any of it. Now I started looking closer. The death certificate was in Spanish. I'd had it translated once, right after Ellen died, just to have something official to give her estate lawyer. The translation had seemed fine. I pulled it out now and looked at it with fresh eyes. The signature of the local official. The stamp. The date. I opened my laptop and searched for the name of the Guatemalan town listed on the certificate. Pulled up the local government website. Ran it through Google Translate. Found the section for vital records. Then I sent an email to their office in broken Spanish via translation software, asking for confirmation of a death record for David Mitchell, American citizen, dated 5 years ago. The response came back in 2 hours. Their system showed no record of an American death registered in that town during that time period. My hands went numb. I called the mission organization, got a friendly receptionist who connected me to their director. "Mr. Mitchell, of course I remember David. Such a tragedy. How can I help you? I need to verify some details about his death. For insurance purposes." "Certainly. What do you need?" "The local contact in Guatemala who handled the burial arrangements. I'd like to speak with them directly." A pause. "Let me pull our records. Can you hold?" 3 minutes of hold music. Then, "Mr. Mitchell, I'm showing that our team leader for that trip was Pastor Marcus Sullivan from Crossroad Community Church. He would have handled all local arrangements. Have you spoken with him?" "I will. Thank you." I hung up and stared at the phone. Pastor Marcus, the man who'd delivered David's eulogy, the man who'd consoled us, prayed with us, visited Ellen weekly until she died, the man who'd personally vouched for Jennifer when she'd asked for financial help, the man who, according to Tyler, Jennifer was talking to about seeing David. I needed help. This was bigger than I could handle alone. My neighbor, Carl Henderson, had been FBI for 30 years before retiring to our street. We'd had coffee together a few times, talked about fishing and football. Never anything serious. But I trusted him in that way you trust people who've spent their lives dealing with lies and finding truth. I walked across the street and knocked on his door. Carl opened it in his reading glasses, book in hand. "Robert, everything okay?" "No," I said. "I think my son might be alive, and I need help proving it." Carl set down his book and listened while I told him everything. Tyler's confession, the Guatemalan death certificate discrepancy, Jennifer's phone conversation about bringing money. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Robert, if what you're suggesting is true, this is fraud on a massive scale. Wire fraud, conspiracy, possibly kidnapping if David's being held against his will. We'd need real evidence before going to the police." "I know. How much money have you sent her?" $250,000, over 5 years. Carl whistled low. "Okay, here's what we do. We start with surveillance. Basic stuff. Follow Jennifer. See where she goes, who she meets with. If she mentioned being somewhere on Saturday, We find out where. I've still got equipment, contacts. We can do this quietly. Thank you, Robert. He looked at me seriously. There's a chance Tyler misunderstood what he heard, or that Jennifer was talking about something else entirely. You need to prepare yourself for that possibility. I know, but I also need to prepare myself for the possibility that my son has been alive for 5 years while I mourned him. Carl nodded slowly. Then we'd better find out the truth. Saturday morning, Carl and I were parked 3 blocks from Jennifer's house, in his nondescript sedan. He had a camera with a telephoto lens and a thermos of coffee. I had binoculars and a knot in my stomach that hadn't loosened since Tyler's revelation. At 9:15, Jennifer's car backed out of her driveway. She was alone. Tyler presumably staying with a friend like he did most weekends. We followed her out of town, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. She drove for 90 minutes, heading north into rural farm country. Finally, she turned off the highway onto a 2-lane road, then onto a gravel drive marked with a small sign. Peaceful Waters Retreat Center. Retreat Center? I said. Carl was already pulling up information on his phone. Private facility. Looks like it advertises itself as a faith-based recovery and meditation center. Rustic cabins, group therapy, spiritual counseling. Recovery from what? Doesn't specify. Could be addiction, mental health, trauma. He lowered his phone. Or it could be a convenient place to hide someone. We parked off the main road and watched through the trees. Jennifer's car sat in the small parking lot near the main building. She got out carrying a large envelope. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a man in his 40s. They stood talking, too far away for us to hear. Then, a third person joined them. My heart stopped. Even at this distance, even with 5 years of difference, I knew that walk. Knew the way he tilted his head when listening. Knew the exact slope of those shoulders. David, my son, alive. Carl grabbed my arm as I reached for the door handle. Wait, we need to see more. We need to understand what's happening. That's my son, I said, voice breaking. He's alive, and they've been lying to me for 5 years. I know. But if we go charging in now, we lose any chance of understanding why. We lose the ability to build a case. They could disappear. Robert, take him somewhere else. We need evidence. I watched David walk back into the building with Jennifer and the other man. My son, alive. Right there. Carl took photos of everything. The facility. Jennifer's car. David entering the building. When Jennifer left, 30 minutes later, we followed her back to town. But my mind was miles away. That night, Carl came to my house with his laptop. I did some digging on Peaceful Waters Retreat Center. On paper, it's owned by a nonprofit called New Horizons Ministry. Want to guess who sits on the board? Pastor Marcus. Pastor Marcus Sullivan. Chairman. Crossroad Community Church. Provides major funding. And get this, the church's mission trips to Guatemala. They're organized and led by Pastor Marcus personally. Every single one for the past decade. I felt sick. He's been part of this from the beginning. It looks that way. But we still don't know why. Why fake David's death? Why keep him hidden? That's when I remembered something. A week before David left for Guatemala, we'd had dinner. He'd been excited about the mission trip but also distracted. When I'd asked if everything was okay, he'd said, "Dad, if something ever happened to me, would you make sure Jennifer and Tyler were taken care of?" At the time, I'd thought it was just pre-trip anxiety. Standard, what-if thinking. Now I wondered if he'd known something was wrong. Carl, what if David discovered something? Something about Pastor Marcus or the church? What if that's why they had to make him disappear? Then we need to find out what he discovered, and we need to get him out of there. Over the next week, Carl and I surveilled the retreat center. We documented everything. Jennifer visited twice more, always carrying envelopes. Pastor Marcus came once, meeting with David privately in one of the cabins. We couldn't get close enough to hear conversations, but Carl managed to get employment records for the retreat center. Only 2 full-time staff members, both with criminal backgrounds for fraud. The director we'd seen with Jennifer had served time for running a fake charity scheme. "This whole operation smells," Carl said. That question was answered on day 8 of our surveillance. David came outside early in the morning to chop wood. He worked for about 20 minutes, and we got clear photos of his face through Carl's telephoto lens. Photos that showed someone who looked thin, tired, and when he thought no one was watching, desperately sad. Then the director came out and said something to him. David's whole body language changed. Shoulders hunched, head down, submissive. He followed the man back inside immediately. "That's not a man in recovery by choice," Carl said quietly. "That's a man who's afraid. We need to get him out. We need him to testify about what happened. If we just extract him, Jennifer and Marcus can claim he left voluntarily, that he chose to disappear. We need David to go on record about what they did to him. How do we do that without tipping them off?" Carl thought for a moment. "We need someone on the inside. Someone who can talk to David. Explain that we know he's alive, that we're going to help him. Someone he trusts." "Tyler," I said. "He's too young for this." "Not Tyler. But Jennifer trusts Tyler. And Tyler trusts you." Carl leaned forward. "What if we use the next time Jennifer brings Tyler to visit you? We could follow them. Or better yet, we could get Tyler to help us understand Jennifer's routine. When does she visit David? What does she talk about when she comes home?" I hated the idea of involving my grandson in this. But I also knew that David had been locked away for 5 years, while I unknowingly funded his imprisonment. "I'll talk to Tyler," I said, "but carefully. I don't want him in danger." The next Sunday, Tyler came for ice cream as usual. Jennifer dropped him off. Said she had errands to run. Would pick him up in 2 hours. I watched her drive away, probably heading to the retreat center, and took Tyler to our usual spot at Riverside Dairy. "Buddy, I need to talk to you about what you told me last week. About your mom's phone call." He looked scared immediately. "Did I get in trouble?" "No. You did exactly the right thing. But I need to know more. When your mom goes on these trips, how often does she go?" "Every Saturday. Sometimes Wednesday too. And she always talks about seeing your dad?" He nodded. "She talks to Pastor Marcus a lot. He comes to our house sometimes when I'm supposed to be in bed. But I hear them talking in the kitchen about Dad and the center and something about money running out soon." "Money running out?" That was new information. "Tyler, this is very important. When your mom talks about your dad, does she sound happy or worried?" He thought about it. "Worried, I think. She says things like, 'He needs to cooperate, and we can't keep this up forever.' And Pastor Marcus always says, 'Your money helps with the situation.' My money, helping to keep my son prisoner." "One more question. Has your mom ever said why your dad can't come home?" "She said he's sick, that he needs to stay at the special place until he's better." "But Grandpa," he looked at me with those 8-year-old eyes that saw more than adults gave him credit for. "If Dad's sick, why can't we visit him? Why is it a secret?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out, buddy." When Jennifer picked Tyler up, I walked out to her car. Smiled. Made small talk about his school project. The whole time, I wanted to scream at her. Demand to know why. How she could do this. How she could take my money. Let Ellen die believing her son was dead. Keep Tyler from his father. But I kept calm. Because Carl was right. We needed evidence. We needed the full story. And we needed David's testimony. That night, Carl and I made a plan. "We wire you," Carl said. "You confront Jennifer, but carefully. Don't accuse her directly. Tell her you know David's alive. See how she reacts. Get her talking. Once we have her confession on tape, we bring in the police." "What about David?" "We coordinate with local police. The moment Jennifer confesses, they raid the retreat center." "But Robert, this only works if you can stay calm during the confrontation. If you lose control, if she realizes she's being recorded, she could call Marcus and they could move David before we can get to him." I looked at the photo on my wall. David's college graduation, Ellen beside him, both of them smiling. 5 years ago, I thought I'd lost them both. "I can stay calm," I said. "For David, I can do anything. The wire was smaller than I expected. Carl fitted it under my shirt, tested the audio. Everything came through, crystal clear. I'll be in my car around the corner, Carl said. Say the word Tyler if you need me to come in. Otherwise, just get her talking. I drove to Jennifer's house at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. Her car was in the driveway. Tyler was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Something Jennifer had mentioned on Sunday. She answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, surprised to see me. Robert? Is everything okay? Can I come in? We need to talk. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. Maybe. Or calculation. But she stepped aside. Of course. Her living room was decorated with photos. Tyler's school pictures. Vacation photos. Family shots. And on the mantel, a framed photo of David from 6 years ago. His memorial photo. I stood in front of it, and when I spoke, my voice was steady. I know he's alive, Jennifer. The silence stretched. Then, I don't know what you're talking about, David. My son. Your husband. I know he's alive. And I know you've been visiting him at Peaceful Waters Retreat Center every week. Her face went white. Who told you that? Does it matter? I know the truth. And I need you to tell me why. Why did you fake his death? Why have you been keeping him there? Why did you let Ellen die, thinking her son was gone? She sank onto the couch, hands shaking. For a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You want to know why? Because your perfect son discovered that Pastor Marcus was stealing from the church. Over $1 million over 10 years. Hidden in those mission trips to Guatemala, David found the financial records, confronted Marcus, threatened to go to the police. I felt like I'd been punched. So Marcus killed him? No. Marcus offered him a deal. Disappear voluntarily. And Tyler and I would be taken care of financially. Refuse. And we'd all have accidents. Car crashes. House fires. Marcus made it very clear what would happen if David didn't cooperate. So David agreed to fake his death? He agreed to protect us. Marcus arranged everything. The fake death certificate. The memorial. Making sure you and Ellen never questioned it. And yes, your money, the money you sent me that funded keeping David at the retreat center. Marcus takes most of it. I get enough to live on. And David stays hidden where he can't tell anyone what Marcus did. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You think I wanted this? I loved him. I love him still. But Marcus said, if we ever tried to leave, if David ever came back, Tyler would be next. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to come to me, to the police, to anyone, and risk Tyler, risk all of us? She stood up, angry now. You don't understand what Marcus is capable of. He's got connections, money, power in this community. Half the police go to his church. The mayor's on his board. Who would have believed us? I would have. After Ellen died, you barely spoke to me. You just sent money and took Tyler for ice cream once a week. You were drowning in your own grief. When was I supposed to tell you? The words hurt because they were partly true. I had been drowning, had let my grief blind me to what was happening right in front of me. But I stayed focused. Is David there by choice now? Or is Marcus keeping him prisoner? Jennifer's face crumpled. I don't know anymore. At first, David agreed to it. But 5 years, Robert. 5 years in that place. He's changed. Gotten quieter, more afraid. Last time I saw him, he asked me to help him escape, and I told him I couldn't. That it was too dangerous. That we had to keep waiting. Waiting for what? For Marcus to make a mistake. For someone to discover the fraud. For something, anything to change. She looked at me desperately. I've been trapped too. Trapped by fear and money and the need to keep Tyler safe. Do you understand? I understood that my son had been locked away for 5 years while I paid for his imprisonment. I understood that Jennifer had chosen to protect herself and let everyone else suffer. Did Marcus kill anyone else to keep this secret? She hesitated. There was a church treasurer who started asking questions 3 years ago. He died in a car accident. Single vehicle. Went off a bridge. Police ruled it an accident. She swallowed hard. But Marcus made sure I knew about it. Made sure I understood what would happen if we didn't cooperate. I felt the weight of the wire under my shirt. Felt Carl listening to every word from his car around the corner. Jennifer, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to help David. I'm going to stop Marcus. But I need your help. How? We can't. We can. But you need to trust me. She laughed again. That same broken sound. Trust you? Robert, I've been lying to you for 5 years. Why would you trust me? Because you're Tyler's mother. Because some part of you still loves David. And because if we don't stop Marcus now, this never ends. I stepped closer. He's planning something, isn't he? The money's running out. Tyler mentioned that. What's Marcus going to do when the money runs out? Her face told me everything. He said David's become a liability. That 5 years was long enough. That they need to find a permanent solution. A permanent solution. The words made my blood run cold. When? I don't know. Soon. He's been pressuring me to get more money from you. Suggested. I tell you, Tyler needs expensive medical treatment or special schooling. But I couldn't. I couldn't keep taking from you when Ellen had already. She covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry. I pulled out my phone and said the word Carl was waiting for. I need to call Tyler's school about his schedule. Tyler. The signal. Within 30 seconds, Carl was at the door. Jennifer's eyes went wide when she saw him. Jennifer Sullivan Mitchell, Carl said formally, pulling out his FBI credentials. I'm Carl Henderson, retired FBI. Everything you just said was recorded. You have 2 choices now. You cooperate fully. Help us get David out and bring down Pastor Marcus, and we'll make sure prosecutors know you were coerced. Or you stay silent, and you go down with Marcus for fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to kidnapping. She looked between us, trapped, terrified. Then she started crying for real. I'll help, she whispered. Just please, keep Tyler safe. That's exactly what we're going to do, I said. 2 days later, Jennifer walked into Peaceful Waters Retreat Center, wearing a wire. Carl and I listened from his car, while local police surrounded the property. She met with David in his cabin. We heard everything. Jennifer? David's voice, older and tired, but unmistakably my son. What are you doing here? On a Wednesday, I needed to see you. David, we need to talk. About what? About getting you out. About ending this. A long pause. You know we can't. Marcus will. My father knows you're alive. Silence. Then, what? Your father knows. And he's getting you out. Today, Jennifer. No. He'll hurt Tyler. He'll hurt all of you. We talked about this. We've been talking for 5 years, David. While you've been locked in here. While I've been taking your father's money to fund your imprisonment. While your mother died, thinking you were dead. Her voice broke. It has to end. Today. Now. How did he find out? Tyler. Tyler heard me on the phone and told him. Your son saved you, David. More silence. Then, David's voice, thick with emotion. Tyler. God. Is he okay? He's fine. He's safe. Your father made sure of it. But David, we need you to testify against Marcus. Everything you know about the fraud, the theft, why he forced you to disappear. Will you do it? If I testify, he'll kill all of you. He can't. The FBI is involved. Police are outside right now. It's over, David. It's finally over. That's when we heard new footsteps. Pastor Marcus's voice, smooth and cold. I'm afraid it's not quite over yet. Carl and I were out of the car instantly, running toward the cabin. Police were already moving in. Inside, Marcus had his hand on David's shoulder. Not violent, but possessive. Controlling. Robert Mitchell, Marcus said when he saw me. I wondered when you'd figure it out. Took you long enough. I looked at my son for the first time in 5 years. He was thinner, grayer, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But alive, breathing, real. "David," I said, and my voice broke on his name. "Dad." He took a step toward me, but Marcus's grip tightened. "I wouldn't," Marcus said pleasantly. "We still have so much to discuss. For instance, Robert, did Jennifer explain why this was all necessary? Your son was going to destroy everything I'd built, the church, the mission, the good work we do, over some trivial financial discrepancies. $1 million isn't trivial," Carl said from behind me. "And fraud isn't a discrepancy." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "Who's going to believe that? I'm a pillar of this community. David here is a man who faked his own death and abandoned his family. Who's the criminal in this scenario?" "You are," David said quietly. "And I have proof." That's when he pulled out a small flash drive from his pocket. 5 years, Marcus. 5 years, I've had access to your computer here at the center. Every financial record, every email, every piece of evidence showing exactly how you stole from the church and used mission trips to launder money. It's all here. Marcus's face changed. The pleasant mask dropped, revealing something cold and dangerous underneath. "You've been playing me this whole time? You kept me prisoner for 5 years. Did you think I'd spend that time doing nothing?" David looked at me. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about Mom, about everything. But I couldn't leave. Not without enough evidence to make sure Marcus would go to prison. Not without making sure Tyler and Jennifer would be safe." Police moved into the cabin. Marcus was cuffed and read his rights. The whole time, he kept smiling that cold smile, kept insisting this was all a misunderstanding. But when they let him out and put him in the patrol car, his eyes met mine through the window, and I saw what Jennifer had been afraid of all along. Not a pastor, not a pillar of the community, a predator who'd been caught. David stood in front of me, thin and tired and alive. "Dad, I pulled him into a hug, held my son for the first time in 5 years. Felt him shake with sobs against my shoulder. "You're home," I whispered. "We're going to figure everything else out. But you're home now." The trial took place 4 months later. Pastor Marcus Sullivan was charged with wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, kidnapping, and a dozen other counts. The evidence David had collected, combined with church financial records and Jennifer's testimony, built an overwhelming case. The courtroom was packed. Half the town showed up, split between those who believed Marcus was being falsely accused and those who wanted to see justice. I testified about the $250,000 I'd sent Jennifer, thinking I was helping my grandson when I was actually funding my son's imprisonment. David testified about discovering the fraud, about Marcus's threats, about 5 years in isolation. Jennifer testified about the coercion, the fear, the impossible choice between protecting her child and freeing her husband. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint David as a willing participant who'd gotten cold feet, tried to suggest Jennifer had manipulated everything for money. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. No parole. The church's mission organization was shut down pending investigation. They found evidence of fraud going back 15 years, multiple victims, families who donated thinking they were helping build homes when they were really funding Marcus's offshore accounts. Jennifer pled guilty to conspiracy in exchange for a suspended sentence and probation. The judge took into account her cooperation and the coercion she'd faced. She's in therapy now, trying to rebuild her relationship with both David and Tyler. As for David, he's living with me while he gets back on his feet. Some days are good. He plays catch with Tyler in the backyard, laughs at dinner, seems almost like his old self. Other days, he's quiet, withdrawn. 5 years of isolation left marks that don't heal quickly. But he's here. He's alive. And slowly, piece by piece, we're rebuilding our family. Tyler understands now. We told him the truth carefully, with a child therapist's help. He was angry, confused, scared. But he's resilient, and having his father back, even a changed version of his father, has helped. Last Sunday, We all went to Ellen's grave. David knelt at the headstone and cried, apologizing for making her think he was dead, for not being strong enough to stop it sooner. I told him what I truly believe, that Ellen would have understood, that she would have done the same thing to protect Tyler, that she'd be proud of how he survived and fought back. Looking back now, I wish I'd paid more attention. Wish I'd questioned the death certificate, the hurried burial, the convenient timing of it all. Wish I'd trusted my instincts when something felt off about Jennifer's requests for money. But grief makes you vulnerable, makes you believe things you'd normally question. And people like Marcus know exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. My advice to anyone listening: if something feels wrong, investigate. Don't let fear or grief or trust stop you from asking hard questions. Don't send money without accountability. Don't accept stories without evidence. And most importantly, listen to the children. Tyler saved his father's life because he was brave enough to tell me what he heard, even though he was scared. This isn't a revenge story. Not really. Revenge would have been taking matters into my own hands, hurting Marcus the way he hurt my family. Instead, this is a story about truth, about patience, about using the law and evidence to make sure justice is served properly. 5 years of lies, $250,000 stolen, a wife who died unnecessarily, a son imprisoned, a grandson kept from his father, but also a family reunited, a criminal behind bars, a community learning to ask harder questions about the people they trust. David told me something last week that stuck with me. Dad, I survived by remembering that truth is patient. It waits. It builds. And eventually, it wins. He was right. If this story resonated with you, I hope you'll share it. Not for revenge, but as a reminder that even in the darkest situations, truth and patience can prevail. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, trust, but verify. Love your family, but keep your eyes open. And never, ever stop asking questions when something doesn't feel right. Because sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who need to be questioned hardest.